And before we get started, I have a little shameless commercial about my book, Kawaii Resin and Clay Workshop. It has all the techniques that I use for this video, including how to make a mold, how to make a template, and mixing in clay and resin details. And I have a bunch of different tutorials that are never before seen that won't be on my YouTube ever, and it's about 25 projects, so I hope you guys check it out, and I'll leave the link to the book in the description box below. So let's get started. Hey everyone, this is Alex or PolymomoTea, and today I have another Among Us video, and this time it's Custom Among Us. So I made some ideas that you guys gave me on my comment on the YouTube section, and I also made some original ideas as well, so I hope you guys enjoy. So first thing first, I made a bunch of clay templates to make my molds. And I made 2 Among Us characters without backpacks, and I have the backpacks baked separately. And then I made them all set up for silicone mold pouring. And I have my silicone mold maker, and I'm ready to mass produce some silicone molds. After 12 hours, I unwrapped all the molds from the wax bordering. Then with my X-Acto knife, I just made a line between the 2 legs so it's easy to open the mold. And then I did that for all of them. And at the same time, I demolded the mold as well. And then once that was done, I decided to just mix a bunch of different colors to pour into my molds. I used 2-part resin this time because the UV resin, in my experience, has a lot of bubbles because my silicone molds don't come out shiny, so the light has a hard time penetrating. So once the 2-part resin is cured, I have my Among Us characters. And then using the X-Acto knife, I just carefully took out like the little thin resin film in between the legs. Then next for the helmet, I just took some light blue clay and I pinched it into kind of a rounded rectangle shape and cut off the end. And I used that and I placed it on the clay template that we've had. And taking some black clay, I rolled it into a snake. And then wrapped it around the little helmet. I made a bunch and I baked that in the oven, so we have our baked helmets. And then carefully I just peeled it off our template. So it's just really important that you don't press the clay too hard onto the clay template so it can actually fall off. Then I picked a few of my favorite Among Us colors and I glued the helmets onto those bodies. So the first custom we're going to do is making the little gray hat that my profile picture is doing. So I'm just taking a ball of gray clay and rolling it flat, and I'm cutting off the round end. And we're going to place that on top of our template. And I did squish it down just a little bit more than I did in this clip. And then with the dull side of my blade, I just made some markings on the back half of the hat. Then for the bill of the hat, I'm taking some gray clay and I'm flattening it out into a pancake shape. And I'm just cutting it at a curve with my blade. And we're just going to wrap that around the front part of our hat. And then I'm just going to add a little dot of clay on top. And then this is the hat. So once it's fully baked, I decided to pick this kind of blue gradient Among Us that I had. And we're just going to add some super glue on the inside of the hat. and place that on top of our Among Us character. So the next custom idea was a cactus. So I took some green clay and I flattened it out into teardrop shapes. And I stacked 2 of the little teardrops on top of a bigger one. And then all around I added little dots of yellow clay. And then of course I had to use a light green Among Us character for the cactus. So once baked, all I did was place some super glue at the tips of the cactus and placed it on the head. The third custom was the magician hat from Mickey Mouse from the Fantasia movie. So I took some sparkly blue clay and I rolled it into a cone shape and cut off the end. And then I took that end and placed it on top of our Among Us character. And using the same blue clay, I'm rolling a snake. And we're going to use that to wrap around our magician hat. Then for the Mickey ears, I'm taking some black clay and I'm flattening it out and cutting it out one little end. And they will be placed on the side of our magic hat. And to be honest, I got super lazy, so I used a mold to make the little moon and the stars using some pearl clay, but you can also cut it out yourself. And carefully I put the moon and the 2 stars on top of my hat and then bake that. I thought this purple Among Us character looked really good with the hat, so I decided to place some super glue onto the hat and put it on top of the purple character. The next custom idea was this flower crown. So I took some brown clay and I rolled it into a snake, and then I twisted 2 ends together to make it kind of like a vine. And I cut off one end, and we're gonna place that on top of our template and kind of curling it up so it's a circle. Then I took dots of red clay and I flattened it out. These are gonna be the flower petals. We're gonna make some roses for our crown. And for 1 piece of red clay, I rolled into a snake. So I stacked the petals together. And then I put the little snake in the middle, and then I rolled it all together. And then I added some extra petals on the side just to make it a little bit more circular. Then for the leaf, I'm taking some green clay, pinching it into a teardrop shape, and using my blade to make the little leaf marks. So then I placed the 5 leaves on top of my rose crown, and I placed on the roses afterwards. Then I took this dark green Among Us character because I thought it'd work well with a rose flowery theme, and I put the super glue on the bottom of my rose crown and placed it on top of my Among Us character. The next custom idea was a takoyaki hat. So I decided to put a little octopus first, so I took some red clay and I cut off the end of a circle and placed that on top of my Among Us template. Then for the tentacles, I took the same clay and I rolled it into a cone shape and cut off the end and placed that on the side of my octopus body. Then for the mouth, I took a ball of red clay and I flattened it. And using a dotting tool, I made a giant circle in the middle, and I filled that with some black clay. And I placed the mouth in the middle of my octopus. and I gave it some dot eyes. And I decided to give it a little headband, so I took some white clay and blue clay and rolled it into a thin snake, and I twisted the ends together, kind of like our flower vine. And I used that to wrap around the little octopus head. And then I also gave it 2 little stubs on the side to look like it's like rope that's tied into a knot. Okay, now we're getting to the actual takoyaki part. So I'm taking some tan clay and I'm putting it on a little eye pin or wire. And I have this frosting, which is liquid clay and brown clay that I mixed together. And we're just going to use that to kind of frost the top part of the little tan ball. And then I'm adding a little thin snake of white clay to kind of look like the mayonnaise or the white sauce on top of takoyaki. And I gave it some little green shreds of clay on top, along with some light yellow shreds of clay on top. So it kind of looks like a takoyaki, I think. And once it's baked, we're going to assemble it together. So first we're just going to place the little octopus on top of our Among Us template. So I put some super glue, and I decided to use an orange color because I thought it matched the theme pretty well. And what we're going to do is take the little takoyaki, put some super glue on where the little wire pole was, and place that on top of the tentacle. And here's my little takoyaki hat. And the final custom idea was this little pokeball capturing a Among Us character midair. So I thought that's a really cool idea. So I decided to make some Pikachu ears first, taking some carrot shapes of yellow and black and cutting off the ends, and placing the black tip on top of the yellow cone. Then I cut off the end, and I actually cut a little bit shorter than I did in the film, just to place it on top of my Among Us character. And then I took a ball of white clay and I cut it in half, and same with the red clay, and these will be our 2 halves of the Pokeball, which I had it kind of partially attached at the end. So then once it's baked, we're gonna glue on our little Pikachu ears with some super glue. So for the red light that shows that it's like capturing a crewmate, I decided to take some UV resin and I smeared a flat layer and cured it. And I used a red UV resin. And then I scored it with a needle, which I didn't show in my clip, but then I used it to cut with my scissors. The scoring really helped, cutting it really easily. And if you had soft UV resin, that's even better. I just ran out of soft. So once I had the perfect shape that fit my Among Us character, I just super glued it onto my Pikachu, and I added a little Pokeball at the end, so it looks like it's being captured midair. So for my first original idea, it is a bubble tea Among Us, which I wrote in the comment section that I would do. So I filled the backpackless mold with clear resin about 1/3 to halfway and let that cure for 24 hours. And then I mixed a bunch of inks to make a light purple color so it looks like taro. So once the layer is cured, I add these little plastic black beads. But if you don't have beads, you can just make it out of clay. But I had these around and I was very lazy. So I filled it up till it was pretty full, and then I filled it with the purple resin and let that cure for another 24 hours. And I took it out of the mold and it looks like this. And then I'm gluing on one of my pre-made helmets. Next, I'm taking some red clay and I'm rolling it into a snake, and this will be the straw. And once I bake it, I'm just gonna make it so it's big enough to fit in the little backpack. So I cut it with scissors, which it cut pretty well actually. And then I placed the little straw into the little backpack mold and I filled it with UV resin and let that cure. And once cured, I took it out of the mold. And then super glued that onto the back of the bubble tea Among Us character. And then I glued the remainder of the straw onto the backpack where they should meet together, so it kind of looks like it's one continuous straw. And then for my second original idea, it's a raw egg, so I filled this mold with some clear resin and I placed a little ball of yellow clay that's been pre-baked and placed it into the mold and filled the rest with clear resin. And after 24 hours I took it out of the mold. And then I glued on one of the pre-made helmets again. So for the eggshell, we're going to take some white clay and we're going to flatten it out. And taking our blade, we're going to cut out little spikes so it kind of looks like a little sun. And then we're going to gently curve the shell inward so it kind of looks like a half circle. And we'll make 2 of them and bake that in the oven. And so it looks like the egg is kind of pouring out of the shell. We're going to take some UV resin and draw a really small Y shape to it and let that cure. And then I made the Y a little bit longer and put that in the UV lamp one more time. And then I put super glue on the inside of one shell and placed one side of the Y into it and let that dry up. And I decided to try it with UV resin. Actually, UV resin was much better than the super glue for this. And then I let that cure. And then I took some scissors and I just cut off one end so to make it flat, and it surprisingly cut really well. And I placed UV resin onto the cut end of the Y and placed it on top of my Among Us and let that cure under the lamp. And I decided to add another domed layer in the back side of the Y so it doesn't look as flat, so it's a little bit more rounded. And the final step is to give it a layer of glaze, and this took about 2 hours, but I think it looked great because it shows the clearness of the resin. And of course I gotta show at least like 15 seconds per Among Us character, so I hope you guys enjoy this montage. And thank you everyone for giving me ideas. I know it took like basically half a year for me to even film this video, but I finally did it. If you guys want to see more, I can't guarantee I'll make another one for another 6 months at least. I don't know. I'm a very slow worker, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video and thank you for all the amazing ideas. And stick around for a bonus clip that I didn't know how to exactly add it into the video without it being kind of weird, so I just added it at the very end. So thank you for watching and I hope you guys enjoyed.